So Elastic Audio is all about making rhythmic changes in audio tracks that have already been recorded. So Elastic Audio provides something that Pro Tools calls track-based time compression and expansion, TCE. It does this by analyzing all the transients that it finds in a track, and then using those to analyze the beat and tempo that's intrinsic to the file. And then if it can, it sets bars and beats to it as well. And that allows the track to become from a sample-based audio track to a tick-based audio track. So Pro Tools has 4 basic processors to do this, each one with its own algorithm that's kind of specialized in one way or another. Now to find these, you need to be in the edit window, and you can go over to this, what doesn't really look like a button, but it's got a little plunger on it. You can click this guy, and you will get a drop down with our 4 basic types. So polyphonic is your all-purpose algorithm. It's best for using over like a complete mix or just a go-to if you're not sure which one's going to work the best. Rhythmic is clearly for things that have very clear attack transients like drums. And then monophonic is set up for single line material like vocals or bass. Finally, Varispeed is for kind of fun special effects like slowing down tape. And then finally, Xform, notice it's not in the same group with these 4. These all work in either real-time or rendered processing, but this last one, Xform, only works in a rendered form. So that means it's not doing its processing real-time. It will render the entire track. This is actually the most advanced processing and won't run in real time. So usually what the best workflow is play around until you get your changes the way you want them with your tempo here. And then afterwards, you can switch to Xform at the end and then let it render for the best quality. So just so you know, as you're doing all your Elastic Audio adjustments, when these are in real time, they can demand a fair amount of system resources. So if you're having troubles, you might get a prompt from Pro Tools to switch to rendered processing. So even polyphonic, if you select polyphonic for this guy and then click on that thing again, the drop down, not on the word polyphonic, but actually on the plunger, then you can actually choose to switch between real time and rendered if you want to. So if real time is taxing your system too much, switch over to rendered. It just means when you make changes, it's going to make you wait a second for it to render, and then you can listen to what you did. Now there's a couple other settings you should know about. So we know where now to turn on or off Elastic Audio. If you use this a lot, you might want to have a couple of preferences set that have Elastic Audio on by default. You can go to Setup, Preferences, you'll get the dialog, make sure you're on the Processing tab, and then you'll see Enable Elastic Audio on New Tracks. You can check that. And then also when you're dragging and dropping in from the desktop, you might also want, so drag and drop from desktop conforms to session tempo, you might also want to click that on all files. So that will automatically enable Elastic Audio for anything you drag and drop. And then there's one more place you can do it, and that is in a workspace window. If you have the metronome icon, the audio files conform to session tempo button on in a workspace, it will also automatically turn on Elastic Audio for clips that you drag and drop into your session. Okay, so when you do turn on Elastic Audio on a track, Pro Tools will generate what are called event markers. So places where Pro Tools thinks there are rhythmic events happening. You can see these in the analysis view. So if you go to your track view selector and go over to analysis, and by the way, if you're zoomed out too far, you will not see these. They will disappear. But I'm going to zoom in, and you'll see these kind of ruler-like lines that have appeared in this analysis view. And it's very accurately grabbing each of these drum hits. So if I play this back a little bit, so it's catching really accurately each of these drum transients, right? So each one of these, not only does it create these event markers, but it uses these to decide where the bars and beats are. And if Pro Tools is confident about the tempo that it's analyzed, it will switch the track to ticks. If it's not very confident, if it doesn't know the tempo or can't find it, or the tempo changes a lot, it will leave it in samples. That doesn't mean you can't still do things to adjust the audio. It just means that it won't automatically conform to the session tempo like a tick-based track will. I'm going to go ahead and enable Elastic Audio for all 4 of these audio tracks. And I'm just going to use polyphonic on all of them. And you'll notice that as I click that, it kind of grays out for a second because it does a first pass to process it. So if you have a lot of audio or the processor's already being taxed, it might take longer. But watch, I'll click polyphonic, watch the clips, they'll gray out for a sec as it processes. And they're back. And then let's do this one too. Okay, so I've turned on Elastic Audio on all 4 of these tracks, and you'll notice Pro Tools wasn't quite confident that it knew the tempo of the bass track or the guitar track. And you'll notice over here, we have sample-based tracks still. It didn't switch them to ticks. That doesn't mean we can't still change this, but they're not going to respond like a MIDI file. It's not going to be that easy. Let's just listen to this drum track and see if Elastic Audio does a good job of adjusting the tempo. So if I go too far, I get some artifacts. It's not too bad. Well, maybe down, say 40 clicks. Let's see what we get. Oh, still a little bit of artifacts there. But this is a 20 click difference from the original tempo of the track. I hear a little bit of artifacts, but almost nothing. Okay, so say that we want to now, on our Elastic Audio enabled tracks, create a slowdown at the end of the piece. So let's try it. So I'm going to go to the end, and the last few seconds or last few bars, we're going to make a linear tempo change. So let's make the last couple of bars here have a linear tempo change so it slows down at the end of the song. So I'm going to go to Event, Tempo Operations, Linear. Now we might get some artifacts here, but we're going for it anyway. 150. Okay. Okay, so if you want to do this with a clip, you can. So my tempo change starts here. I can separate this clip on the bass track. It's got Elastic Audio on. So I can right click it and go conform to tempo, or I can go clip menu and conform to tempo too, which is right here, conform to tempo. So I'm going to right click, conform to tempo, and it should adjust that bass clip right there. And notice it goes totally the wrong way. That's partly because when it analyzed these, so if we look, I'm going to undo this, and when we look at the analysis, there's way more, so I'm going to play that bass. So you'll notice I have only one note here in the bass, but it gave me 2 event markers, and then also here. So it's having trouble finding in that bass track where those markers should go. So we'll adjust those later to get them to work a little bit better. On tracks that are easier to analyze, it does a good job. The bass and guitar track were tougher. For quick and dirty, this is an okay start. In the next video, we'll talk about how to get these things more accurate.